Born under the name Temujin, his childhood was far from royal. In fact, it was a life of hardship and survival. After his father was poisoned by a rival tribe, Temujin's family was cast out, left to wander the unforgiving Mongolian steppe. With no allies and no tribe to protect them, they were forced to search for food, barely surviving the brutal elements. But it was in these harsh conditions that the seeds of greatness were planted. Temujin, though young, showed a fierce will to survive. He even killed his brother. Later, you'll understand why. The struggles of his early life toughened him, giving him the determination, cunning, and resilience that would eventually allow him to rise above his circumstances. So how did a poor, abandoned outcast defy the odds to become one of history's greatest conquerors? What choices, alliances, and strategies propelled him from obscurity to legendary status as Genghis Khan? Join us as we uncover the incredible transformation of a man who turned the harshest of beginnings into an empire that spanned continents. Temujin, who would later become known as Genghis Khan, was born around 1162 in the harsh Mongolian steppe. His birth was marked by an omen. He was said to have been born clutching a blood clot in his fist, a sign among the Mongols that he was destined for greatness. His father, Yasuge, was the leader of a small Mongol tribe and named his son after a defeated Tatar chieftain, Temujin, perhaps hoping his son would follow the path of a great warrior. However, Temujin's early life was far from the path of a future conqueror. At just 9 years old, after his father was poisoned by a rival tribe, Temujin returned home to claim his place as the leader of his father's tribe. But the tribe refused to accept the boy as their leader, seeing him as too young and inexperienced. As a result, they cast out Temujin, his mother Holin, and his siblings, leaving them to survive alone in the unforgiving Mongolian wilderness. Without the tribe's protection, the family faced starvation and the constant threat of attack. The Mongolian steppe is a brutal environment, and Temujin quickly learned that survival would require not only strength, but also cunning. The family survived by foraging for wild plants and hunting small animals, but tensions grew within the family itself. In one of the most defining moments of his youth, Temujin killed his half-brother Bektur during a dispute over food. This act of fratricide, though ruthless, marked Temujin's determination to lead and secure his family's future at any cost. Around the age of 16, Temujin married Berta, who would become his lifelong companion. But shortly after their marriage, Berta was kidnapped by a rival tribe, the Merkits, as revenge for an old feud. Temujin, with the help of his blood brother Jamuka and his ally Togrul, led a daring raid to rescue her. This successful raid not only reunited Temujin with Berta, but also solidified his reputation as a rising leader in the Mongolian steppes. Shortly after this, Temujin faced another major trial. He was captured by the Taichi-Ut tribe, former allies of his father. They enslaved him, shackling him in a wooden board and keeping him under constant guard. However, Temujin's resolve never wavered. He eventually escaped with the help of a sympathetic guard, once again demonstrating his ability to turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for survival and growth. These early struggles shaped Temujin into the leader he would become, instilling in him the resilience, cunning, and willingness to make bold decisions that would define his later conquests. The betrayals, hardships, and early victories were only the beginning of his path to becoming Genghis Khan, the unifier of the Mongol tribes. After his daring escape from the Taichi-Ut tribe, Temujin knew that survival alone was not enough. He needed power, and power meant forging alliances and gaining the loyalty of others. His first major alliance came with Togrul, a powerful Khan who had been an ally of his father. By gifting Togrul a valuable black sable coat, Temujin secured Togrul's favor and support, effectively gaining a powerful protector. But perhaps one of the most critical relationships in Temujin's life was his bond with Jamuka. The two had been childhood friends and blood brothers, united by a shared vision of greatness. Together, they formed a small army, and for a time they were inseparable, raiding rival tribes and gaining power. However, while they shared a deep friendship, their views on leadership and loyalty began to diverge. Temujin believed in a meritocratic system, where leaders were chosen based on their abilities rather than their birth. This philosophy earned him the loyalty of lower-born soldiers, who saw a chance to rise through the ranks under his leadership. Jamuka, on the other hand, adhered to traditional Mongol aristocratic values, where nobility was determined by bloodline. This fundamental difference in their beliefs began to sow the seeds of rivalry between the two. The tension came to a head when, during a raid, Jamuka chose to brutally execute 70 prisoners, by boiling them alive, an act that shocked even the hardiest Mongols. Temujin, though not shy of violence, believed in strategic brutality, targeted and purposeful, rather than excessive cruelty. This act of savagery was the final straw, and the blood brothers parted ways, setting the stage for a bitter rivalry that would last for years. Temujin's growing army and his radical leadership style began to attract followers from across the steppe. Warriors from various tribes flocked to him, eager for the opportunities that his merit-based system offered. Unlike other Khans, Temujin shared the spoils of war equally among his men, and he promoted based on skill and loyalty rather than birthright. This approach not only made him popular, but also built an incredibly loyal and effective fighting force. As Temujin's reputation spread, so did his ambitions. He knew that to achieve true power, he needed to unite the fractured Mongol tribes. But standing in his way was Jamuka, his former friend and now his greatest rival. The conflict between these two leaders was inevitable, and the stage was set for a struggle that would determine who would rule the Mongol steppe. As the rivalry between Temujin and Jamuka escalated, the Mongolian steppe became a battleground for control over the fractured tribes. In 1186, Temujin's forces, though smaller, proved to be more disciplined and fiercely loyal. Yet despite his early victories, Jamuka struck back in 1187, defeating Temujin in a brutal confrontation. Temujin's forces were decimated, and he was forced to retreat, disappearing from the steppe for several years. This period of defeat did not break Temujin. Instead, it strengthened his resolve. During his time away, Temujin rebuilt his forces, learning from his past mistakes and forging critical alliances. One of his most important allies was Togrul, the leader of the Karaite tribe, whom Temujin considered a father figure. By marrying off one of his daughters to Togrul's son, Temujin cemented this alliance, securing vital military support and protection. In addition to political alliances, marriage played a key role in consolidating his power. Temujin married Berta, a woman from a powerful tribe, in his youth, and her influence and connections strengthened his ties to the broader Mongol world. Later, Temujin strategically married many other women from various tribes, using these unions not only to secure loyalty, but also to create networks of allegiance that transcended traditional rivalries. These marriages were not merely personal, they were political tools that helped build a coalition of tribes under his leadership. By 1206, Temujin had systematically defeated his rivals and gathered a formidable following. He implemented a revolutionary system that favored loyalty and skill over noble birth, breaking with centuries of Mongol tradition. Temujin also built a complex intelligence network and adopted innovations from the cultures he encountered, making his army a fearsome and adaptable force. His ability to balance military strength with strategic diplomacy was one of the keys to his rise. The decisive moment came at a Grand Kurultai, or tribal council, in 1206. This gathering of Mongol leaders was unlike any before it. For the first time in centuries, nearly all the Mongol tribes were united under one leader, Temujin. At this Kurultai, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, a title that is often interpreted to mean universal ruler or oceanic ruler. It was a moment of triumph, the culmination of years of struggle, survival, and ruthless ambition. But this title was more than just a name. Genghis Khan embodied a new vision for the Mongols, one of unity, discipline, and conquest. He reorganized the Mongol army, ensuring that it was not divided by tribal loyalties, but rather operated as a cohesive unit loyal only to him. He also introduced strict laws to ensure order and stability within the ranks, such as the Yasa Code, a set of decrees that governed everything from military discipline to family conduct. Genghis Khan's rise was a transformation not just for him, but for the entire Mongol people. His new title reflected the grand ambitions that lay ahead, not just the unification of the steppe, but the conquest of lands far beyond Mongolia. With his newly minted army, disciplined and fiercely loyal, Genghis Khan set his sights on the great empires that bordered his land. The world was about to witness a leader unlike any other. With the Mongol tribes united under his rule, Genghis Khan set his sights on expanding beyond the borders of Mongolia. His first target was the Xixia Kingdom, located in northwestern China. This was a powerful and wealthy kingdom, but Genghis saw it as the perfect stepping stone for his plans to conquer the broader Chinese empire. In 1209, he launched a campaign against the Xixia, using the full force of his newly organized and disciplined army. What made Genghis Khan's military approach revolutionary was his ability to combine brutal tactics with psychological warfare. His armies were highly mobile, moving swiftly on horseback and striking fear into their enemies. One of his most effective strategies was to offer cities a choice. surrender and be spared, or resist and face total annihilation. This fear of absolute destruction often led cities to surrender without a fight, expanding Genghis Khan's empire with minimal bloodshed in some cases. However, when resistance did occur, Genghis Khan's retribution was swift and merciless. After the Xixia kingdom submitted to his rule, he turned his attention to the Jin dynasty in northern China, which controlled vast territories and resources. The Mongols faced much larger and more fortified forces in the Jin, but Genghis Khan's tactical brilliance allowed him to overcome these obstacles. One of Genghis's key innovations was his use of intelligence and espionage. He developed an extensive spy network that provided him with vital information about enemy strengths, weaknesses, and internal conflicts. He would often send spies disguised as merchants or diplomats into enemy cities, gathering valuable intelligence that would inform his strategies. But Genghis Khan didn't rely solely on traditional Mongol techniques. He was a master at adopting new technologies and tactics from his enemies. In his campaigns against the Jin dynasty, he learned about siege warfare, a method the Mongols had never needed as nomads. Genghis Khan quickly adopted Chinese siege technology, including catapults and battering rams, which allowed him to overcome even the most fortified cities. His ability to adapt and learn from different cultures made his army one of the most formidable in history. By 1215, Genghis Khan had conquered large portions of northern China, including the Jin capital of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. However, he was not satisfied with just Chinese lands. His ambitions stretched far beyond. In 1218, Genghis Khan turned his attention westward, toward the Khwarezm Empire. The Khwarezm Empire, located in modern-day Iran and Central Asia, was a powerful Muslim state that controlled key trade routes along the Silk Road. Initially, Genghis Khan sought a peaceful relationship, sending a trade caravan to establish diplomatic ties. However, when the governor of a Khwarezm city executed the Mongol diplomats, Genghis Khan's fury was unleashed. In 1219, he led a massive campaign against the Khwarezm Empire, one that would become legendary for its brutality and effectiveness. His army of 200,000 Mongol warriors swept through the Khwarezm Empire, destroying entire cities, slaughtering their populations, and leaving nothing in their wake. Genghis Khan's strategy was not just to defeat the Khwarezm armies, but to erase their civilization from history. His soldiers razed cities to the ground, ensuring that those who resisted would serve as a warning to others. One of Genghis Khan's most feared tactics was his use of terror as a psychological weapon. When a city resisted, he would often order the massacre of the entire population, sending a clear message to neighboring cities about the consequences of defiance. This tactic of psychological warfare allowed him to conquer vast territories with relatively few battles. Entire regions would surrender without a fight, knowing the fate that awaited them if they resisted. But Genghis Khan was not just a destroyer, he was also a skilled statesman. After the conquest of the Khwarezm Empire, he set up a sophisticated administrative system to govern his expanding empire. He established trade routes and encouraged commerce, allowing the Silk Road to flourish under Mongol rule. Genghis Khan also promoted religious tolerance, understanding that a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire needed cooperation to thrive. He granted protection to Buddhist, Christian, and Muslim communities within his empire, allowing them to practice their faith freely. By the early 1220s, Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, making it the largest contiguous empire in history at that time. His military campaigns reshaped the political landscape of Eurasia, toppling ancient dynasties and establishing Mongol dominance over vast territories. Despite his ruthless tactics on the battlefield, Genghis Khan's empire was marked by a period of relative peace and stability, known as the Pax Mongolica. Under Mongol rule, trade flourished, ideas spread, and cultures interacted in ways that had never been possible before. The stability brought by Mongol governance allowed the Silk Road to become a thriving trade route, connecting the East and West in a way that transformed the world. As Genghis Khan's empire continued to expand, his vision of a united Mongol world was closer than ever. His brutal conquests and innovative tactics had made him one of the most feared and respected leaders in history, but his legacy was only beginning. The Mongol Empire, under his guidance, was not just a product of war, it was a new world order, one that would continue to shape history long after his death. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had transformed the Mongol tribes into a united force that dominated much of Eurasia, but his legacy extended far beyond his conquests. Genghis Khan left behind an empire that reshaped the world politically, economically, and culturally. His ability to merge military brilliance with innovative governance left an indelible mark on history. One of the most remarkable aspects of Genghis Khan's legacy was his focus on meritocracy. In a time when power was typically inherited through noble birth, Genghis Khan promoted individuals based on their skills and loyalty. This policy not only inspired fierce loyalty among his followers, but also ensured that the best and most capable individuals rose to positions of leadership. Men like Subutai, one of the greatest military strategists in history, rose from humble beginnings to command vast Mongol armies, thanks to Genghis Khan's meritocratic system. Genghis Khan also introduced a legal code known as the Yasa, which applied to all his subjects regardless of their background. The Yasa promoted unity and discipline within the Mongol ranks and extended to areas like trade, military conduct, and even family life. While Genghis was known for his ruthless tactics in war, his laws were progressive for their time, promoting fairness, order, and efficiency throughout his empire. Under the Yasa, blood feuds were forbidden, and theft and betrayal were harshly punished, creating a relatively stable society across his vast domains. Despite his fearsome reputation as a warlord, Genghis Khan was also a visionary statesman. He understood that maintaining control over such a vast empire required more than just military might. It required stability, trade, and cooperation between different cultures. Genghis Khan actively encouraged trade along the Silk Road, ensuring that merchants could move safely through his territories. This trade route connected the East and the West, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies across continents. The stability brought by the Mongol Empire allowed for unprecedented cultural and economic exchanges between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Perhaps one of Genghis Khan's most progressive policies was his approach to religious tolerance. In an era marked by religious conflict, Genghis Khan allowed people of different faiths, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, and others, to practice their religions freely throughout his empire. He recognized that in order to maintain control over a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire, tolerance was essential. His respect for religious diversity was groundbreaking and laid the foundation for a more inclusive approach to governance. Yet, despite these progressive policies, Genghis Khan was, at his core, a conqueror. His empire was built on war and the fear he instilled in his enemies. His campaigns were brutal, and his legacy in the lands he conquered was often one of devastation. Cities that resisted him, like those in the Khwarezm Empire, were wiped out, and entire populations were killed to serve as examples to others. This duality, being both a destroyer and a creator, defines much of his legacy. Genghis Khan's death in 1227 remains shrouded in mystery. He died while campaigning against the Shisha kingdom, but the exact cause of his death is unclear. Some accounts suggest he fell off his horse and sustained fatal injuries, while others claim he died from illness. According to Mongol tradition, his burial site was kept secret, and his body was laid to rest in an unmarked grave, possibly somewhere in the remote mountains of Mongolia. To this day, his burial site remains one of the greatest mysteries in history. Even in death, Genghis Khan's legacy lived on. His sons and grandsons continued his campaigns of conquest, expanding the Mongol Empire to its zenith. At its peak, the empire stretched from the Korean peninsula to Eastern Europe, making it the largest contiguous empire in history. His grandson, Kublai Khan, established the Yuan dynasty in China, further cementing Mongol rule in Asia. The influence of the Mongols continued to shape Eurasia for centuries, from the rise of the Ming dynasty in China to the establishment of the Mughal Empire in India. One of the lasting impacts of Genghis Khan's empire was the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace. Under Mongol rule, much of Eurasia experienced an unprecedented level of security and stability, allowing trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange to flourish. Merchants and travelers like Marco Polo journeyed across Mongol lands, bringing stories of the East back to Europe. The flow of ideas and innovations, from Chinese gunpowder to Persian astronomy, spread across the empire, helping to shape the future of Europe, Asia, and beyond. Today, Genghis Khan is remembered as both a brutal conqueror and a visionary leader. His methods of warfare were ruthless, yet his innovations in governance, law, and diplomacy were ahead of their time. His impact can still be felt in the modern world, from the spread of trade routes to the principles of meritocracy and religious tolerance. In Mongolia, Genghis Khan is celebrated as the founding father of the nation. His image graces everything from currency to statues, and his legacy is a source of national pride. Outside Mongolia, his reputation is more complex, seen by some as a tyrant and by others as a transformative figure who shaped the course of history. Ultimately, Genghis Khan's story is one of ambition, resilience, and transformation. From his humble beginnings as an outcast to his rise as the leader of one of the largest empires the world has ever seen, his life remains one of the most extraordinary tales in history. His legacy continues to spark debate, but one thing is clear: Genghis Khan changed the world in ways few leaders ever have. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.